Hey everyone, it's Andy from Be Kind Homestead here, and in today's video, I'm going to give you everything that you need to know to be ready for the bees on day one. So I'm going to assemble a starting brood box, and you're going to see everything that you're going to need to get started. Before I do that though, we're going to want to take a look outside here, and you're going to want to be ready to pick out the most important part of beekeeping really, which is for the location of the hive. If you're in the northern hemisphere, you're going to want the entrance to the hive facing as much due south as possible. The reason for that being, when the seasons go between fall and summer and spring and summer, the sun goes down in the southern sky. So that keeps the sun directly on the front of the box for as much of the season as possible, which is what you want. When you're picking a location outside too, obviously you want to lift them up off the ground a little bit, keep them away from mice and other pests like that. You also want to think of having a bit of open space in front of them. And I know you're going to want to say, of course, because they might sting me, but it's not just for that. Even if it's an area where nobody's going to be there, when bees leave the nest, they go fly straight out and they fly in circles up higher and higher and higher. So you're going to want to have open room in front of the hive so that they can do those bigger circles to get up high over buildings, trees, anything, and they have room to circle down and come back down easier. It can make it a lot more difficult if there's things for them to crash into all over the place. The last thing that's, in my experience, been the toughest thing is preferably you want a space that has open sunlight in the cooler seasons as much as possible, but in the summer, they're going to get more shade than sunlight. There are ways around that. If you have an open area and obviously no trees growing over that you can deal with, you can umbrella it in the summer. You can put shade over it in the summer. I'm fortunate enough to have space where the trees all have are broadleaf trees that die off in the winter, so sunlight gets through all winter. And then as soon as the trees bud and grow and fill out and create shade, then the bee box is going to be in the shade. And that's really what I'm looking for, is that kind of balance there. So those are certainly the main factors of what matters outside as far as the hive placement goes. There can be more to it than that. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop one in the comments. I'll help you out any way I can. Next, I'd like to go through my hive setup, what I have, and I'll actually build it here for you guys in front and explain each piece a little bit so you can know what's going on with them. The first, I have the ramp that goes on the very bottom underneath everything else, and really all this acts for is to lift the hive up a little bit, and this ramp is just for the bees to have room to land on, walk easily up to the nest. Not 100% requirement, but I kind of like it, so I do use it. I notice the bees like to hang out on it and stuff, and it is useful to them, so I don't mind getting it. That's the very base of it. Next is the actual base of the hive itself, and these can come very differently. There are a few things that I do recommend. The first is to get a screened one with this slide out plastic tray underneath, and the reason for that is you can slide this tray out and check for varroa mites without disturbing the bees at all. If you don't get one that has this slide out underneath, then you do have to check trays and take the top off and disturb the bees a lot more. Where really, if I have this tray, I can come out and check daily if I want to, and the bees aren't going to mind at all. It's not even going to bother them. So that is one difference. But this is the base of the hive, and also I have it screwed on there. I don't want to take it off, but there is a mouse guard that goes on the base of this hive. There's holes for the bees to get through. That'll make sense later when it's all together. But that's going to be the front. So that sits like so. And then next is going to be the brood box itself, which I'm going to stand and I'm going to put this. So this is it's just a pine box. That's it. But I want it to sit just with that mouse guard inside, like so, and have it sit straight. These have 10 trays in it. I recommend getting these plastic ones that have the comb started. It makes it easier for the bees and they work faster. And as you can see, they'll start building honeycomb off of that. But there's these 10 trays are in each brood box, and you're going to want to start with 10 here. And I will say at this point, even though I am only showing this one box, by the end of the season, you're going to want one box like this. There's a second one that's this size that goes on top. And then there's a third smaller one that goes on top of that. So if you can get that at a cheap deal now, feel free to get it now, because if all goes well, you're going to need it later anyway. But for now, all you're going to need is one of these boxes to start. So this is the first brood box. But next is the inner cover for the hive. It sits snugly on this, and that's just to wrap the bees in pine and to hold it off and let them get a little bit of airflow through the top. And then you have the outer cover, which goes on top. Usually has a sheet metal on top, because that's literally just a roof just to keep the weathering off. The bees won't do very much but hang out underneath this around this hole. A lot of the time you'll see them hanging out there, and if you put an entrance in the front, they'll be in and out. So with that, that's going to be the box itself. You need one or two of these, and this is a hive feeder that just has a mason jar with holes in it that just sits in like this. And I recommend two of them because I'll just switch it in and out daily. But this sits right in the entrance, and you can put 50-50 sugar water in here. When you get the bees, you're going to want to do that immediately. So you want to have this first, at least one. I recommend two again because it's easier just to go switch them out. But you at least want to have one of these to make sure that you can feed the bees immediately as soon as you put them in there. The last thing that you're going to want is just a strap. And it doesn't have to be anything heavy duty or anything like that, but when you're not messing with the hive at all, you're just going to want to strap it down. You can loop it all the way around to itself. A lot of people say do that if there's bears or anything like that in the area, but I'm going to say do it anyway. The wind, there could be a lot of things. Yeah, so you can bump it yourself. It's safer just to keep the thing strapped simply when you're not in there anyway. So that's going to be part one for this series of my beekeeping adventure for this year. I do have to order bees myself. I do have to get them, so there's going to be a whole lot more to come as far as what needs to happen when you're getting them as it's getting closer. So feel free to subscribe and follow along. If you're watching this and you've got time to keep doing more homework like you're on YouTube and obviously doing, keep doing that. Just look up and be a sponge of knowledge as much as you can, because the more that you do learn, the more your odds are of being successful. It doesn't mean you absolutely will be. There's going to be a learning curve no matter what. But doing that kind of homework will help you out much more in the long run. If there's anything I can do to help, or any questions or anything like that, please feel free to drop it in the comments. I'll be back as soon as I'm ready to get stuff going outside and start prepping for the bees out there. Until then, best of luck, everybody. And please, as always, be kind to each other. Thanks, everyone.